Hello, hopefully you can hear me now. And welcome to another Ask Coach Cam, where I answer your burning fat loss questions. So, without further ado, we're going to get into it. Oh, I hope you all like my new hairdo, by the way. It's all come off. I don't know. I'm not sure how I feel about it. But yeah, earlier in the week, I asked people for their questions, and this is what we have. If you want, you can ask a question while I'm streaming, and I'll try to get to them at the end. If not, I'll be sure to include them next week. So, first question we have is from Beth, who asks, how do I get more protein in my diet? I don't eat red meat. I'm assuming that means you eat other meats. First of all, do you need more protein? If we want to get academic about it, how much is enough protein in our diet? And really, when it comes to macronutrients, what I tell people as well is if we're losing fat, number one is caloric deficit. Okay, so we want to focus on those calories rather than the macronutrient makeup. Now we can improve on that with our macronutrient makeup. So our macronutrients, for those of you who aren't aware, is our carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. So the NHS recommendation for protein is 55 grams for the average adult minimum, but that works out at a kind of like 12% of your total macronutrients, which I would argue is quite low. So if we work off, we've got the American College of Sports Medicine. They say for the recreational exercising adult, we should be more on 0.8 to 1.5 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. So if you're 80 kilos, for example, and we're going for 1 gram per kilogram of body weight, that would be 80 grams of protein. Okay, so we can instantly see that 55 shoot right up to 80 grams. And to be honest, I would go a little bit beyond that. I tend to do a 4-3-3 ratio, particularly in a caloric deficit. So that would be something like 40% carbohydrates, 30% proteins, 30% fats. And that's just because I personally do a fair amount of resistance exercise, so I'd be looking more towards that 1.5 grams per kilogram sort of grams of protein, and so that tends to work out near enough 30% for me. So to ensure I'm getting enough protein, I then have to adjust the other ratios, if that makes sense. If you're not doing as much resistance exercise, it's perhaps okay for it to be a bit lower, and then you can adjust your percentages kind of in that way. And the best thing about percentages really is if you're increasing your calories, then you will increase your intake of all the other macros as a percentage. So yeah, 4-3-3 is something that's talked about a lot in general in the fitness community. Yeah, like I say, generally that 40% is carbohydrates, and carbohydrates have become a bit of a bad guy in modern society, mostly because of the availability of sugars, so simple carbohydrates. But without going too much down a rabbit hole, I think carbohydrates aren't that much of a bad guy. And if we're in a caloric deficit anyway, perhaps our percentage does need to increase so that we're ensuring we're fueling ourselves for the day and that we're getting enough carbohydrates in our diet, especially if we're working out a lot and especially if we're doing a lot more cardio. So how much protein you get kind of depends on how you're working out, really. But if you use that 0.8 to 1.5 grams per kilogram of body weight on a sliding scale, and 1.5 is someone like me who does resistance exercise 3 or 4 times a week, and 0.8 is more just your general recreational active adult, try and put yourself somewhere on that scale, come up with a gram figure, and then incorporate that into your total macro picture and kind of see where that comes out. And I guess another good thing to know when you're doing that, to calculate it all, is converting grams to calories. Okay, so if we know we want to eat 1,800 calories, for example, it's usually 1 gram of carbohydrates is 4 calories. 1 gram of protein is 4 calories, and 1 gram of fats is 9 calories. Okay. So usually you convert it to calories and then kind of figure it out from there. So yeah, first of all, getting a bit academic with the question. First of all, you need to figure out how much is enough protein. And then really just from a really simple perspective, in terms of getting protein in, proteins are amino acids, or made up of amino acids. And so we've got 9 essential amino acids that we need in the body. So you've got sources of complete proteins, which have all 9 essential amino acids. And that includes, from a meat eater's perspective, eggs, dairy, fish. You've got meat, and that includes red meat, but also includes things like pork, all that kind of stuff. So you're getting complete proteins from those sources. By the way, eggs, I generally, people go on about, I don't know, acai berries and all these kind of things as the next superfood. Eggs are the superfood. They have, if you think about it, they have everything included in them for the development of a baby chick. So if you're eating hopefully an unfertilized egg, you've got all the nutrients there that a baby chick would need to begin life. And obviously you also need all of those things. So eggs, really good food. So incorporating things like omelets, stuff like that into your diet, great way to get all different kinds of, not just proteins, but micronutrients. So we're talking about minerals and nutrients. And then in terms of more vegetarian sources, it gets a bit harder. You've got soy, buckwheat, quinoa. Those sources of those have complete proteins in them. But then the other side of the thing is we've got sources of incomplete protein. So they might not have all 9 essential amino acids, but they still include a reasonable amount. And by marrying them up, you can get all 9. So, and that includes things that are traditionally considered carbohydrates. So you've got things like cereals and grains, beans in particular. So I will cook a 5-bean chili, for example, which is great. And beans are full again of all other kinds of minerals and nutrients that are healthy for us. So that a 5-bean chili is a great way to get loads of beans in and get all that stuff. Nuts, you incorporate nuts in your diet, and various vegetables. Vegetables do contain sources of protein, albeit not very much, depending on the vegetable. But kind of leading on from that, we can make simple switches that actually increase protein from avenues you might not expect. So, for example, switching to a whole grain bread. We've already said that grains contain protein. If instead of going for a heavily refined white bread, if we substitute in a whole grain bread and make our sandwich with that, you're going to find usually that those breads have more protein in, and things like that. So, and that's just one example of many of different little switches we can make that will increase the amount of protein we're getting in our diet. And then lastly, in terms of diet, it's worth talking about supplements. So protein shakes, you can even get BCAA pills, branched chain amino acid pills, things like that. I always say with supplements, it is what it says on the tin. It is a supplement to a diet. So it's just that kind of thing to push you over the edge if you need it. And also perhaps a good way, so getting protein in around your workout, a shake with preferably mixed with milk or soy milk or something like that is usually a good way to get protein and some carbohydrates in around your workouts. Things like that. It's a bit easier than carrying a chicken breast around with you, which some people do. So supplements, they are a supplement to an already healthy diet. So really we want to make those changes on a dietary level rather than making up the difference through supplements. But they are there to supplement if you're finding you're not getting enough protein and things like that. Um, but kind of getting into what you asked, we've kind of talked about what has protein in it, and you may be aware of all those foods. You may not. I don't know. Um, but also getting more in is kind of what you asked, and really, I think what that comes down to is planning. So if you plan, you don't have to plan out every single meal. To be honest, I usually have the same breakfast every day. And I'll usually have a fairly similar lunch, and then so it's only planning my tea or dinner for you Southerners. Planning my tea, I will, yeah, I'll just plan those out, and it can be as simple as, I mean, we have it came free, I don't know, with a Tesco delivery at one point. Just a simple thing on the fridge and writing the meals down. But what doing that planning will do, you'll be aware while you're planning. Okay, what is the protein source on this dish? So if you think about a plate and you've got your carbs, which might be rice, something like that, and a protein source and maybe a fat source, maybe your protein and fat source will be the same thing. So I know you said you don't eat red meat, but a steak would be an example of that. And sort of thinking about your plate and what the different sources are, just planning it out will kind of get you to think of that in advance. But I think planning is so crucial because you'll also find you'll just eat better in general. So I think a lot of things go awry when we don't have a plan. Okay, we get home, we look in the fridge and we go, oh, not much in tonight. I'm starving. Maybe we'll eat out. Or you go from the fridge instead to the freezer with some, I don't know, maybe you got some chicken nuggies, something like that in the freezer, and you'll have those. And really, that's not, some people go, oh, you just need to be more motivated and go out to the shop. No, sack that off. I've already talked about how I don't like the word motivation and motivation being a reason for failure. The reason that you've gone for those chicken nuggies or that takeout or whatever is a failure to plan. And planning is such an essential part of any diet plan and lifestyle change. And so planning will help you get those changes that you need. And yeah, you'll eat better in general anyway. You'll have less takeout. You'll have less of those freezer diving into less nutritionally complete meals, shall we say. So yeah, just a simple meal planner. Doesn't have to be complicated. It can literally just be Monday, chili, done. I know what we're having. And that generates your shopping list. And then you go shopping. And guess what? You make better choices in your shopping because you have a list. You have exactly what you don't go, oh, I guess we'll get some of this and some of that. Might make things easier on your wallet as well. Okay. So we've got loads of reasons why planning meals makes everything so much better. And when you're planning those, just start with what you know. Like I say, if you can cook a good chili, stick a chili up there. Spag bol, great, get that up there. And maybe look at, you said you don't eat red meat, so if we're going spag bol, let's say, and we don't want to include beef mince, let's look at some other options. Can we have turkey mince in there? There's all these different options in the supermarkets these days that are just great for adding in, or even going for some of the vegetarian options that are on the shelves that include high protein content. So going for some of those things like that. But start with what you know. Start very simple. Maybe try and include one meal you haven't cooked a week, something like that. And over time, what you'll do is you'll learn and improve. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Okay, that's the other thing about planning. Don't try and sit there and come up with a perfect plan. Just get 5 meals down, 5 easy meals that you can cook, that have a protein source, and then which kind of brings me to my next point, which is measure. We need to then measure what we're getting in, and that's how we take things to the next level and we improve. So we plan, and this is why a plan can be imperfect. We plan, we eat it, then we measure, we put it in an app like MyFitnessPal, and we go, oh, this didn't have as much protein in it as I thought. And then that will spark more thoughts. Okay, how can I get more protein into this meal? And things like that. So over time, you will learn and improve. And that's kind of what the 1% way is all about. It's all about those small changes and small improvements. So I hope that helps. Thank you for your question, Bethany. So, uh, I guess just to summarize, we need to figure out how much protein is the right amount of protein. We've gone through some sources of protein and things like that, and we've talked about complete and incomplete proteins. And then we talked about planning and measuring. And I think those are your three keys to success in getting more protein in your diet. Let me know how that turns out. Okay, so going on to the next question, we've got no name for this person. It's at NYL_Yim. Should I do time under tension? I feel like it's not intense enough as I use less weight. Okay, just right off the bat, really easy answer here. Do what you enjoy, okay? That applies to the types of exercise you do. So whether if you don't enjoy running, but you enjoy going for a walk, go for a walk, okay? Really simple. And that's the same with doing weights in the gym. If you're not enjoying what you're doing, switch it up, do something else. If you prefer the quick hitting kind of circuit training, then do circuit training. If you prefer to do heavy, intense sets with longer rest periods in between, do that, okay? The kind of, unless you're training for competition, the kind of difference between these methods of training is reasonably negligible for the results you want, okay? Especially when it comes to losing fat, which is mostly what we're talking about. So do what you enjoy right off the bat. But kind of going deep under the question, should I do time under tension? I don't really know what that means. If I'm being honest, I don't know what you've been taught as to what time under tension is. So I'm kind of making an assumption here that you've been taught to do reps really slow. And because of that, because you're going a really slow tempo, you're having to use a lighter weight and things like that instead of a heavier weight. Now, when it comes to this, studies are kind of inconclusive. There's a 2019 study that says this stuff is negligible. There are other studies that say it's not so negligible and time under tension is great. But overall, when we look at the overall picture, it's kind of inconclusive. So again, it comes down to what method of training do you prefer? What specifics are you training for? What are you trying to get? Because maybe it's just the wrong thing to focus on for what you're trying to get out of training. But if we're going, so let's assume we're trying to lose fat, but we're also trying to grow some muscle. We're trying to get some muscle growth, things like this. Then that's called hypertrophy muscle growth. And generally, it's as simple as we just want to do sets with 6 to 12 reps and 3 to 6 sets. I usually say 8 repetitions times 4 is a reasonably good balance for those exercises, okay? And when we say 8 reps, that's usually the 8th rep is hard to get at. We're near to failure, especially on that 4th set. Really, on that 4th set, we want to be failing on the last rep. That means we've kind of worked out almost perfectly. And just for some of the gym bros out there, failure is when your form slips, not when the weight drops on your face, okay? A failure is defined as when your form goes. So if we use a bench press as an example, this might be only getting one side up and struggling to get the weight up, okay? That's failure. You failed in form because you failed to keep the bar straight. That's how I define a failed rep. And if we're doing that, if we're kind of getting to that point on the last rep of the 4th set, that's good. So and that's how to get hypertrophy. If we're doing 8 reps easy for 4 sets, we're not really working anymore in the hypertrophy zone. We're just kind of ineffectually training. And then you've got, part of the reason people might have spoken to you about time under tension is form, okay? So generally, slower and controlled is better. So one tempo people talk about is 1-2, 1 to 2. So 1:2, okay? And that's 1 up and 2 down, okay? 1 up, 2 down, okay? At that kind of pace, okay? That's generally a good pace. If we're going fast, if we're doing this, number one, the weight's probably too light. And number two, this is really where our form starts to slip. And also, depending on the exercise, we may just be getting the wrong workout completely, okay? You see a lot of guys in the gym, and if you haven't before, maybe this will be a glass-shattering moment for you. But there'll be a lot of guys in the gym who are doing curls, for example, and they'll be curling the weight. But what they're also doing is they're swinging their hips to get that weight up, okay? They're swinging the hips, getting that weight up. And you know, you're talking about, you know, it's not intense enough because you use less weight. There's also an argument to be had that using too heavy a weight and using your hips in a barbell curl, for example, you're working out your hips. You're not working out. You're using momentum, okay? And typically when we try and go really fast and do a really intense workout, we're not working out the right elements, okay? What you want is that 1-2 and getting that nice pump on the bicep, and really feeling it squeeze at the top and then down. So yes, it all of this kind of depends what you're talking about, really. So that 1-2 tempo is a good tempo, and if you're going any slower than that, then yes, I imagine it does get boring and you're not able to use enough weight. But if you're using heavier weights but your form is slipping, so really this is time under tension versus form. What I'm really talking about is form. You know, it's the same in a squat, same in a deadlift. If you're doing it really fast, in a deadlift, coming off your toes instead of your heels, things like that, it could potentially lead to injury and things like that as well. So yeah, really rapid tempo is also not the solution. And I guess lastly, there are ways to maximize your time under tension in sort of other ways. So I think this is best demonstrated on a machine. So if you're using a machine and you can see the weight plates go up and down, okay, what you don't want to do is let the weights touch, because you completely release all tension, okay, and then you've got to pick it back up again as you go back up. We can increase time under tension simply as we're doing our reps. We're not letting that weight plate touch the bottom, okay? We let it hover near and then straight back up, okay? And then instead of our time under tension being each individual rep, our time under tension is the whole 8 reps. So there's things like that are good for time under tension. Same for a barbell curl. Again, another really easy example. If we're doing a barbell curl, okay, and we're doing this, we don't want to just completely relax and let it drop at the bottom and let our shoulders take the weight. We still want to feel that tension at the bottom of the rep and then come back up, okay? We don't want to drop the weight. Things like squat, you're always under, unless you're dropping it every time, or doing sets of 1 rep, you're under tension the whole time, okay? So that's a better way generally to increase time under tension, rather than doing it really slowly, is to just not put the weight down in between reps. Obviously, you would do it in between sets. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. I hope that helps. Let me know if that answered your question, and let me know how that works out for you. All right, thank you for your question. And looking at the time, that's half an hour already. Geez. So I guess that's the end of today. So that's all. So yeah, that's all for today. Share this with your friends or in any groups. Make sure to hit subscribe and any notification bells and all those kind of things. Or you can also head over to the website www.the1percentway.com to subscribe there. And you can even book a free game plan session and get started on your fat loss journey with me one-to-one. But good luck to all of you out there with your fat loss transformations, and I'll catch you next week, same time, same place.